Chuck Gormley, CSN Mid-Atlantic, has a front row seat for this one. And I'll start with this, Chuck. You saw the game last night. You saw what happened. Is there any evidence that even this thing gets past Wednesday night?
No. I think that the game that the game the Flyers needed to win was Game 3. And when they didn't and when they lost in that fashion, I thought, okay, this series is over. And they're all saying the right things. Wayne Simmons said last night, we've got to come out hungrier. There's a lot more fight in us. And that's true. But clearly the Capitals have been the better team in this series, even though the scores didn't indicate it up until last night. The Flyers, I feel like they gave their best punch last night, and just the undisciplined way that game finished is not a good sign for Flyers fans.
No, and Chuck, one thing that's interesting is, in Game 1, the ice was tilted to Washington. In Game 2, 5-on-5, the Flyers stood in there. The fluky goal kind of changed some things around, but you could say that they were at least belonged on the ice. Last night, they get that first goal, and you're thinking, all right, but at what moment after the first goal did things just spin out of control? Because, as you mentioned, the energy was there. They got on the board first. Where did it go wrong?
You know what? I thought it went wrong when Braden Shen took a slashing penalty with no time left on the clock in the second period. It's a 2-1 game. You cannot allow that to happen. And, that is an indication of an undisciplined team. And I think the Flyers took themselves out of these games with the penalties they took. They took, I think, 8 penalties in that third period. And, I know it was getting out of control, but there's got to be a point in a game where, I don't want to say you concede, but you don't start running guys from behind. And, I would say that no matter who the opponent is, it's not a good display of hockey. And it's a shame because, the Flyers have this reputation of never giving up, and I'm all about that. But I think when you cross that line and players get injured, and then, of course, the wristbands being thrown onto the ice, it's a dangerous thing. I talked to Barry Trotz about that today, and he said, what if Claude Giroux steps on one of those things and blows out a knee or crashes into the boards? Like, you just don't want that kind of thing happening. And it was not a good way to finish that game, but we'll see what happens in Game 4. I can't imagine the Flyers taking those kinds of penalties in Game 4. It'll be a quick one.
Chuck Gormley with us, CSN Mid-Atlantic. Chuck, you talked with us before the series started, and who would have predicted that John Carlson was the guy that would be the offensive explosion, at least on the power play, for Washington? How much does that illustrate the Capitals being good, or is it the Flyers' PK being bad?
Well, I think the Flyers made a decision to take away Alex Ovechkin on the power play, and in my opinion, that's the best decision you can make as an opponent because he burns too many teams with that one-timer, and the Flyers have taken that away from them. The problem is that you've got a guy like John Carlson at the point, and he's not just blasting away. I mean, one of those shots, just waiting and looking for a lane and finding it and putting it through, deflection. So, John Carlson has kind of been one of those guys where if you take away Ovi, somebody else is going to hurt you. And that's the problem with the Capitals is they have so many guys on that power play that can hurt you. It can be T.J. Oshie in the slot. It can be Nick Backstrom from the half wall. Marcus Johansson has been good in this series. I think he's got 5 points. So, you kind of mentioned this going in. When a number 8 faces a number 1, there's a reason for that. And the Capitals are a much better team, the much deeper team. And the Flyers just don't have the experience yet. I think it's a good step, even if it is a short series. I think it's a good step for the Flyers to take because it'll give 7 guys on their roster a chance to do something they've never done before, and that's playing a playoff game.
Now, Chuck, you mentioned before the series started, you were nice enough to come on with us before the series even began, and one of the topics we talked about at that point was former Flyers Mike Richards and Justin Williams. And sure enough, Justin Williams last night screened Mason on one of the goals and was right in front. And I know that Richards, well, both with his yapping, and he was in the mix of the Pierre-Edouard Bellemare brouhaha. Your prediction has come true.
Yeah, I think Richards, he's gone at it with Braden Shen the whole series, and that these two guys have really battled. Ironically, they were traded for each other, so maybe they've got a little something that makes them play that way. But yeah, Justin Williams has been strong. Like, that second line of the Capitals hasn't done much in this playoff series, and that they've been pretty quiet. Kenny Kuznetsov really hasn't put up the point that everyone thought he would have to do for the Capitals to move on. But when you're as deep as the Capitals are, that's what you're going to get. And the Flyers just don't have that same depth. Even if you look at the defense pairing, Brooks Orpik, we learned today, is not going to play in Game 4. And the Capitals have two NHL defensemen that are ready to step in. So either Mike Weber, who's a big guy whose last playoff series came against the Flyers when he played for Buffalo, or Taylor Shorney, who played in the Penguin series last year. So both of those guys have playoff experience. And you can't find many teams in the NHL who can plug two guys into their defensive eight that have already played in the playoffs.
Chuck, you mentioned Brooks Orpik not going to play. Flyers fans are trying to figure out how to solve Braden Holtby. The Flyers are trying to figure out that too. It turns out the only thing that could stop him is his own teammate. What are we hearing today?
Yeah, there was a point in the practice. I'd say a little past the halfway point of practice. Braden Holtby collided with a teammate, left the ice, was stretching his leg, and appears to be okay. Barry Trotz said that he plans on having him available tomorrow and plans on starting him. So unless something changes, he was walking around the locker room without a limp. I don't think it's a serious thing, but there is no plan on calling up a goaltender. So my guess is that Holtby will be fine. He'll be in there. My bigger question is, who's going to be in goal for the Flyers?
Probably Michael Neuwirth, I would think, if you had to make me pick one right now. That's probably who you'd say too, right?
I would think. I don't know Dave Haxtell that well, so I'm not sure what his mindset is. But, yeah, I would think that they might go with a change. I mean, you know that both of those guys are under contract for next year, so it's not like you know, what either of these guys is going to play his last game as a Flyer. So I don't know. I thought it was a good call going with Steve Mason. I think it would have been placing too much blame on him for a Game 3 or a Game 2 that I thought the Flyers were outplayed. I think that would have sent the wrong message to his teammates. Plus, Michael Neuwirth has only played, maybe one or two games in the past, 4 weeks since the injury. So not really fair to put him in there, too. So I don't know. Honestly, I don't know if it matters.
Yeah, I think you're right, Chuck. Chuck Gormley's with us, CSN Mid-Atlantic, and I think you're right about that. I think it would have been an interesting situation had Neuwirth been healthy down the stretch and Mason didn't play so much, because they had been splitting those two guys up so consistently, and then Neuwirth got hurt. Before Neuwirth got hurt, he was kind of the guy, and then he kind of got cold, and then they went to Mason, and they never got a chance to go back to Neuwirth because of the injury. But I'm wondering how they would have kind of handled that. And as you mentioned, Haxtell hasn't really showed us much other than the fact that he really split those two guys up. But let me ask you, Chuck, do you think Mason has been a factor in this series? In other words, has played really well, that where you would say, well, you can't blame Steve Mason, because a lot of these goals have been questionable, but so many people have kind of been giving him the benefit of the doubt that he got them here and that, well, they're not scoring either, so you can't really blame him. But has he played to a level to, raise the level up of other players?
I don't think so. I think that Steve Mason would probably tell everyone if they asked him that he has not been on top of his game, that he could play better, that the games could have been closer. I don't think he would have made the difference. I mean, there are very few times where a team is completely outplayed in a playoff series and they win. And the only time it happens is when the goaltender is the best player on the ice for both teams. And that certainly hasn't been the case in this series. We saw it way back when Ron Hextall did it. against the Oilers, and the Flyers still lost. We saw it 2010 when Yaroslav Halak did it for the Montreal Canadiens, and they beat the top-seeded Capitals at that time. And if not for that kind of performance, the Capitals probably would have gone on and maybe gone on, who knows, to the Stanley Cup final. But a goaltender can make a huge difference one way or the other, and that was a crushing goal, that long chip shot that Jason Chimera had in Game 2. I mean, that will have a lasting impact on this series. People will remember that for a long time, but they would remember it a lot longer if this was a very close series.
Chuck, I want to get your perspective from the Washington side of things. Do you look at, and do the Capitals look at a Flyers team in two ways? Are they out of gas? One, Gostisbehere has played over 80 games. That's a considerable jump for him. He looks like a different player in this series. And two, is it a team right now that is just basically outmanned? I mean, if you put these two teams up even strength, I think we talked about it when you came on last week, is Washington's deeper and they're better at this point. But are you also now looking at a team that just fought so hard to get here that they have just hit the wall?
Well, that's what I see. I see a team that, like you said, the goaltender played so many games down the stretch. They had to win so many big games and secure so many tight points just to get in. And I think once they did, like I said, the price you pay for getting in like that is to face a team that is one of the best in the league. And it doesn't matter which conference you're in, that number one seed is a seed number one for a reason. And I think the Flyers, should be proud of the fact that they got into the playoffs. I think it's always better to get in and to experience it for the first time for a lot of those guys than it is to not get in, even if it is a short series. I think there's a lot of benefits there. And, the Flyers did surprise a lot of people. I didn't expect them to make it to the playoffs. If you had told me at mid-season that they would have, I would have been surprised. So I look at it as Shane Gostisbehere got a chance to taste what it's like to get hit a lot in a playoff series, to find the ice a lot tighter, to find the emotion of a road building and a home building. Like, there's a lot of benefits there. So I think the Flyers are a team that is building, and some people say that they have to win with Claude Giroux, and Claude Giroux is still a young player by a lot of standards. So I think with some of the players that are coming up in that system, like Pavarov in the Western League, I think that there is a bright future, and they're doing it the right way. Ron Hextall is building through a blue line. He's got young defensemen, and that, to me, is how you build a team in the NHL, and I think they're taking the right approach.
Of course, he preaches patience, and he's slow to bring guys up, but if you were the GM then, Chuck, which young guy do you want to see come up next? Provorov is almost a lock, but, I'll let you pick him if you want.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the Flyers system that well, but I've heard so many good things about Provorov that I think that would be a guy that could make a big step. And, even Gostisbehere next year, everyone thinks, it's going to be easy after that first season, but a lot of teams are going to key on him next season. So, yeah, there are steps, and it's not easy to make the playoffs, and I don't think that can go understated. I think the Flyers had a pretty good accomplishment, and they need to get maybe more out of Sam Gagner. They need to see their young prospects, especially their forward prospects, blossom a little bit more than they have. And Sean Couturier is another guy that I think can be an impact player in this league. So, yeah, I think the future is bright. I think it might take some time, but I think, like I said, if you can build on the back end, you're going to be in good shape for a long time.
Travis Konechny, another name maybe to watch out for, too. I'll just throw that in the soup while we're talking prospects.
And, Chuck, I like to get your take on the Capitals at practice today. Is this a team that you've covered in the past that has are you noticing the difference of a team that's up 3-0? Is this a team that wants to finish this thing tomorrow night, or have they let down a little today at practice? Or can you see a focused team that is different from the ones of the past?
I see a different team in that they're such a veteran group. You know, you have Jason Schmeier, is 36 years old. Alex Ovechkin played so many playoff games. Justin Williams. Like, there are so many guys on that team that have had experience either in Washington or outside of Washington that's led them to this point. You know, it's one thing to win in the regular season, but it's another thing to go deep into the playoffs. And the core group of Capitals have not gone deep in the playoffs. They've never made it past the second round without Ovechkin. But there are other guys like Brooks Orpik and Matt Niskanen and Justin Williams and Mike Richards that have all been there deep into the playoffs. I don't think anybody in either locker room has played more playoff games than Mike Richards. And that definitely has a value. And I think that's the difference that you're seeing in this series. When things get kind of hairy out on the ice, the Capitals are the team that have been kind of relaxed and not overreacting, and the Flyers have been the team that's overreacted in terms of taking penalties or making a mistake. And that, to me, is the difference in this series. You know, honestly, I think the Capitals see themselves on a mission here, and so does Alex Ovechkin, and he's been one of the best players on the ice. And I don't know if you guys noticed this last night. There was a play in the game where Wayne Simmons had the puck in the neutral zone, and Alex Ovechkin made a beeline to him. And I'll tell you what, if he would have hit Wayne Simmons, he didn't. I mean, Wayne Simmons avoided that hit. But if he would have, we would have been picking up Wayne Simmons' teeth, I think, a few rows into the stands. That was a scary moment, and I'm actually glad for Wayne Simmons' sake that he was not hit on that play.
I know, Chuck, a lot of people have commented, and Barry Trotz said it was embarrassing for the game, but was that a big topic of conversation in the Capital locker room, the fan reaction, obviously the bracelets being thrown onto the ice? Was that something that was covered in the Washington media? Because obviously it's been covered here. But was that talked a lot about, or was it more about the win?
A lot of players didn't want to talk about it. I talked with Dmitry Orlov, and he was actually hit in the face with one of those wristbands while he was being attended to after being hit from behind by Belmar. You know, he laughed about it, but, you know, one thing that Barry Trotz said today, which I found interesting, is that it's one thing to throw those things on the ice. It's another thing for these players to maybe skate on those because they're white. They blended in with the ice, and he said, I just didn't want a guy like Claude Giroux stepping on one of those, blowing out a knee, breaking his leg. Like, that's the kind of thing that could happen when those things are on the ice. So it was unfortunate. I walked past a case, a whole pallet full of those for Game 4. I have a feeling they're going to ship them right back. I don't think we're going to see those in Game 4.
Yeah, I saw that on Twitter. Good stuff, Chuck.
Chuck Gormley, everybody, CSN Mid-Atlantic. The Capitals lead the series 3-0, a commanding lead, and a very impressive 6-1 win in Philly last night. Game 4 tomorrow night right here on 97.3. Chuck, thanks a bunch, pal.
Thanks for having me, guys.